But we do a lot of editing, intercutting clips and things. And, every time you make a pass back and forth, there's a little wear and tear on the tape. Especially in the short format, there's more tension. I can't sit back because my feet don't touch the floor. You don't have that problem with your nice long legs.
No.
All right, tell me.
Okay.
Well, as we sit here, Anthony Perkins, I'm making a prediction, and I'm sure you've heard this before. I think Pyscho 2 is going to be a tremendous hit.
Oh, good. Well, I'm happy to hear you say that, because I think it's always risky when you set out to sequelize a picture that people remember with affection, and don't fool around with any of film that I love and respect and admire. It's part of almost the fabric of people's lives when they think about horror films. I think it's one of the first films that comes to mind. So you're walking a tricky tightrope if you meddle with people's memories. So if you liked it, that's good.
Of course, the shower scene is just the scene that everybody talks about. Is it true that you weren't even present when they shot the shower scene?
Yes, I was in New York working on another show, rehearsing for a Broadway play. So when I first saw the shower scene, it frightened me as it did everyone.
You hadn't heard about it?
I'd heard about it, but of course hearing about it, when you read a scene like that, which was, of course, that scene had no dialogue, just a collection of shots, that kind of thing doesn't really read very scarily. You have to see it.
Yes, indeed. Pyscho 2, I think, is very true to the Hitchcock way of making film.
I agree.
With one exception, and that is the violence is much more graphic.
Well, then what? Then certainly not than it was in some of his films, like Frenzy or Torn Curtain. Both had sequences which were far more graphic than anything in Pyscho 2.
But Mr. Hitchcock said that making Pyscho in black and white was what he wanted to do because he didn't want to see that red blood in the tub.
The makeup man came to me at the end of the filming of this sequel and showed me his bottles of stage blood. And he said, I've only used half a bottle of one bottle. He said, for most of the horror films that I do, I use 4 or 5 bottles. So if you can go by the amount of blood spilled in Pyscho 2, it's very discreet.
Okay.
Well, you've got to reply to that. What do you think?
Well, I think there is one scene, I don't want to give it away, Tony,
no.
but there is one scene that just
jarred you. Well, how about the murder of Martin Balsam in Pyscho 1?
Well, but this just, for me, was more graphic. But, I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
Okay, on to something else. When you did the first Pyscho, did that help or hurt your career?
Well, it hurt it in that people started associating me with that kind of role. It helped it because people could, rather than saying, oh, here comes what's-his-name down the street, they were able to put a name to the face. So it did both those things.
And what do you think Pyscho 2 will do to your career?
Well, I've long since tried to forget about disassociating myself with the specter of Norman Bates. So I've got to give in to that rather than resist it. It doesn't bother me anymore. I have more confidence in myself now that I'm older and have a family. I don't feel quite so remote and alone in the world as Norman did. I feel more a part of the world.
How would you describe the relationship you had with Mr. Hitchcock? Were you close friends, or was it strictly a professional relationship, or what?
Well, it was a professional friendship, although we did see each other socially. It was a professional friendship in that he shared most of his thoughts about the film with me and accepted my ideas almost consistently without question. And I found that to be true of very few directors.
In this particular movie, in Psycho 2, where you choke on the word cutlery, was that your idea or the director's?
Well, it was my idea, and I don't know if I can really summarize this quickly. When I was brought in to see a couple of the girls that they were considering for the role, this was well in advance of filming, suddenly, without warning, they asked if I would be willing to tape some film so they could see both girls kind of in action. And I realized that I was going to have to come up with something of the Norman Bates characterization. I hadn't really thought about what I was going to do. I had some ideas, but I didn't realize that suddenly I was going to have to act the part. And sure enough, just as we were running it with this girl, one of these girls, this hesitation on the word cutlery occurred. So it was almost as if I slipped back into the characterization quite spontaneously.
One last question. There is a current biography of Mr. Hitchcock on the market now. And one of the things, and I'm sure it's an effort to make it provocative, as publishers always do nowadays, it seems, but one of the things in the book is talking and referring to his lust for his leading ladies, particularly Vera Miles and Ingrid Bergman. Do you agree with that?
Well, he was very wrapped up in the filming of this. He didn't have much time. It wasn't one of those shoots where you could kind of wait for the clouds to be right or wait for the blue backings with the special effects to be right. So there wasn't that much time for fraternization. Seemed to me he was a perfect gentleman with both of the girls.
Did he have that reputation at the time?
He did. He also had a reputation of being difficult to work with and indifferent to the input of actors. And those were two things that I didn't find him to be. So I guess you never know.
Well, Tony, I'm looking forward to seeing the grosses on Psycho 2 because I'm quite sure my prediction is going to come true.
Wow.
And who knows, there could be a Psycho 3, couldn't there?
Well, they didn't make this picture with an idea of that, and I think it's always best if you're going to make a picture to throw your entire energies into it and not leave anything, say, well, we'll tell that story later. They did everything they could with this material. Whether there's more material to be squeezed out of it, I don't know.
Okay. To be continued.
To be continued, maybe.
Thank you very much, Anthony Perkins. Lovely to see you here.
Thank you.